You're listening to the Black Eagles podcast with Sinan and Kaan.
Ahmet Dursun Sergen aldı. Sergen Bülent yan yana. Sergen Bülent. Sergen. Yanında Tümer var. Tümer'e doğru atışını kaybetti. Tümer topu aldı. Sergen aldı. Gol. Sergen attı. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi.
İbrahim'in pası. Roma. Şimdi Ahmet. İkinci gole gidiyor Beşiktaş. Ahmet.
Welcome back, episode 29 of the Black Eagles podcast. This is your host, Sinan, live from New York City. And Kaan's not here. Today, we're keeping it short, again, because we have a special episode. Today, we're previewing our encounter with Sarpsborg, who we will be playing against this coming Thursday in the Europa League, in our first match in the group stage. We will be meeting them at 12:55 p.m. here in New York City, Eastern Standard Time. So that's about, almost 7 o'clock, I think, in wherever Kaan is. Sarpsborg is a Norwegian side. They're currently sitting in 7th in the Eliteserien, which is the Norwegian first division. The league is 22 matches in, so that 7th place is no anomaly. They are truly not having a particularly good season, you'd imagine. I'm not sure about the quality of the Eliteserien, but it does feature sides that some might know, like along the lines of Rosenborg and Molde, Vålerenga. So, I'm sure Sarpsborg's not particularly pleased being in 7th at this stage, but that could also theoretically make them all the hungrier in their encounter with us. Will surely be the biggest side they've seen thus far this season. But I'm not going to talk too much about that match, besides giving you the time to see it as I have, and giving you that kind of very basic information. What I am going to do is pass you guys on to Ben Wells of footballradar.com and Kaan Bayazit, my usual co-host from Belgium, who's going to be interviewing Ben. But before I do that, there is some news. So there's cause to bring out the old news theme track here. Something breaking. I don't know what to make of it still. I said as much on Twitter. So Alvaro Negredo is a Black Eagle no more. I think it's basically confirmed because he's been seen at the airport having left, and the latest is that indeed he's on his way out. He's gone. So Alvaro Negredo is gone, and his 4+ million in wages is gone with him. Supposedly we also owed him something like the news is who knows how trustworthy, but somewhere between 2 and 5 million they say we owed him. So, by essentially terminating his contract with us, he's not only gotten us out of paying him the 4+ million that was owed to him for this year, but also, I suppose, whatever it was that we'd previously owed him. I don't know about those numbers. I don't know what to make of this. I don't believe there's any fee. He's joining Al Nassr of Dubai. They play in the Arabian Gulf League. So I don't really know what to make of any of this. What we know for sure is that he's gone. Alvaro Negredo is gone. Of course, this raises questions. Who, for example, will be the go-to striker now? Of course, the likely favorite for this would be Kyle Larin. I know Beşiktaş International has put out a poll, and he's out pretty far out ahead, actually, as far as what Twitter followers think, and that's a fairly sizable number that they're pulling from there. I think they were somewhere in the 300 or 400 vote range already. So in that group, Kyle Larin was the go-to guy, and I personally, I would agree, I suppose. At least right now, he's got the most time in that system that we're playing in with those guys up front, having played quite a bit already for Beşiktaş this season. I think he's the most likely option. With that said, an interesting option as well could be sliding Ryan Babel, because whenever Beşiktaş has moved into a 4-4-2 with two strikers this season, one maybe they're down a goal or drawing and trying to pull out ahead, they've often slid Ryan Babel into that second striker role. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that Ryan Babel could be slid into that striker role, freeing up the wings for Jermaine Lens and Quaresma, of course, which would, I guess that's two birds with one stone in terms of solving that problem. The log jam there. Besides that, of course, there's Guven Yalçın, who we've spoken of briefly on the podcast. Şenol Güneş has already given him, a momentary window of playing time in an actual competitive match this season, which is surprising from him. So perhaps that signals he's done something, intriguing in training. On top of the goal, of course, that he scored for Altınordu, and I think he scored for Turkey's under 21s. But this certainly opens up a window for someone to grab that role. Of course, the man who I've not mentioned is Wagner Love, who's also certainly a possibility there, a seasoned striker, the most seasoned among this group, obviously by a long shot, and a guy who has actually found success scoring in the Turkish Super League, as he did with Alanyaspor, at a fairly impressive clip at that. But I think a lot of people within the club's fan base anyway have soured on Wagner Love, and he's not been in good form whatsoever when he has appeared, and he has not appeared in some times as a product of that. So I think the most likely bet is that we go with Kyle Larin up front. We'll see against Sarpsborg. I suppose it helps that we're coming up against a slightly struggling Norwegian side at midweek. Gives us maybe a chance to get our footing before we go into Monday's derby, which is against, of course, Fener. I'll say, as a sort of preview, that we'll be playing Fener at 2 p.m. in New York Eastern Standard Time, meaning 8 p.m., 9 p.m. in Turkey, so it's another late match. But it should be an exciting one. And of course, Fener is not in particularly good standing at the moment. They eked out a victory on the weekend, just barely, against Konyaspor. Konya definitely gave them a run for their money as well. You'd have to say that. So before I move on to the preview of with Sarpsborg, I should probably briefly mention that I was seer-like. I was prophetic in predicting that we would probably end up fourth by the end of the weekend, by the end of this match day. We did exactly that. It was Başakşehir who passed us. They're now 2 points up on us. With 12 points, we still have 10. Konya and Kayseri have 8 each. I'll briefly just say that Başakşehir beat Antalya 4-0 on the weekend. So that didn't go particularly well for us. Trabzon did lose to Alanya 1-0. so they're not coming for us either. But so yeah, 4th place, things could be worse considering how we've lost points and to whom. But yeah, we're in 4th place and only 2 points off of 1st. Galatasaray, Kasımpaşa, and Başakşehir each have 12 points. Galatasaray is in 1st by default based on the goal differential. Kasımpaşa is in 2nd, and then Başakşehir in 3rd. Although I don't quite understand that because Başakşehir has a better... Galatasaray and Başakşehir both have a +8 goal differential. Kasımpaşa has just a +3, which, by the way, we also have a +3, although we only have 10 points. So it should be Galatasaray ahead of Başakşehir based then on the amount of goals they've scored. So I think it should be Başakşehir in 2nd and Kasımpaşa in 3rd now. Although my little Google search is presenting it as Kasımpaşa in 2nd and Başakşehir in 3rd. So I don't know exactly what's going on there. But what I can say is that we are definitively in 4th place with 10 points. So this match against Fener is actually of significance. You know, we're not just playing to beat a rival, which is always important, but we're playing to stay within close range of 1st. Fener, meanwhile, still only has 6 points, so they're playing for quite a bit as well. It should probably be worth noting that Galatasaray is going to be playing Akhisar on Sunday. As we know, Akhisar can be tough, though we've beaten them, and Galatasaray is in pretty scintillating form at the moment. Başakşehir is playing on the road against Bursa, so that's no easy task for them, although Bursa has not been in particularly good form thus far. And Kasımpaşa is hosting Alanyaspor, who's coming off a nice victory against Trabzon, so no easy task for them either. Anyway, we're playing for a lot on Monday against Fener, but we'll be, I'm sure, talking plenty about that with Kaan when we return. For now, we are simply previewing Sarpsborg, and so, without further ado, I present FootballRadar.com's Ben Wells, interviewed by our own Kaan Bayazit. Kaan, I pass it to you, sir, and I'm sure that we'll all come out very informed as a product of this interview. Thanks for listening.
Sorry. There we go. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Black Eagles podcast. Today we've got a special treat for you. We're going to look at one of Beşiktaş's opponents in the upcoming Europa League campaign. Beşiktaş were drawn in Group I, and one of their opponents are Sarpsborg from Norway. And here to talk to us about Sarpsborg is Ben Wells, an analyst for Football Radar who follows the Norwegian league. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hiya, nice to be on. Thank you for having me.
Now, Ben, is there anything you want to tell us? How long have you been following the Norwegian league, for example, and what type of analyzation do you do for Football Radar?
Yeah, so basically I've been covering Norwegian football for about 3.5 years now. I joined my company, Football Radar, about 3.5 years ago, and I think this is now my 4th season on the league. So I started off covering the 2nd tier, which is called the Obosligaen, and very recently moved up to the top tier, covering the Elite Serie. But yeah, so basically we do a lot of analysis, anything from player analysis sort of to analysing players, as well as just whole team analysis, following all the Norwegian clubs, following their league form, their European form. So as you can probably imagine, I watch quite a lot of Norwegian football. So day to day I sort of watch generally 2 to 3 games a day, as well as trying to catch every of the live matches where possible.
So how did you fall into following the Norwegian league? Do you have some sort of connection to Norway, family related or something like that? Or is it just something that you really got assigned to?
Yeah, it was completely random, to be honest. So when I first joined Football Radar, you join and you work your way up the ladder sort of thing. And eventually I sort of got offered the chance to cover a league, and it was between the Italian Serie B, or the Norwegian second division at that time. And basically the main factor for me choosing Norway was the fact that they played on a Sunday afternoon, which meant that I could still have my sort of Saturdays off, my Fridays off. So at that point I didn't really know anything about Norwegian football, just sort of stumbled into it. But yeah, sort of 4 seasons later, I'm now sort of addicted to Norwegian football. I'm sort of watching it every day. It's overtaking the Premier League for me, which is obviously the league that I used to watch the most, being from London. So yeah, it was a good decision, but a bit of a lucky one, I guess.
So, well, you're from London. Do you have a favorite team in the UK?
I'm a Liverpool fan. Yeah, I'm a Liverpool fan. So it's good to see.
So you'll know our new goalkeeper, Loris Karius, very well.
Yeah, I was going to say it's good to see Loris Karius and Ryan Babel as well. Obviously.
Exactly. Yeah, Ryan Babel played there for years as well. So let's move on to the meat and potatoes, as I always like to say. Let's move on to Sarpsborg. You've been following the Norwegian football for, like you said, 3.5 years now. Sarpsborg are a relatively new team. They were founded in 2008, but are they like a mashed together from different teams or something, or were they actually founded then? Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one. There's been a few teams in Norway that have sort of followed this same structure. Basically, they used to be called Sarpsborg FK, and that was a club that's been going since sort of the mid-1900s. But then, as with a lot of teams in Norway, there's a lot of other local teams around in the area. And I think it was in sort of 1999-2000, all these teams, I can't remember how many exactly there were, but there's quite a few sort of local teams. They decided to sort of group together, put all their efforts in as one club to try and make the sort of the Norwegian top division at the time. So I think it was in 2000 they formed this club called Borg Football, which was the amalgamation of all these other clubs. And since then they've just been sort of progressing up and up the leagues. And yeah, they've been playing Elite Syrian football now since 2011. I think they did get relegated once, but they've been back up, and yeah, ever since 2013 they've been consistent in the Premier Division. So the project seems to have worked, and they're going from strength to strength every year so far.
And how are they viewed in Norway these days? Because of course, there's the top team, Rosenborg, which everyone knows, and then there's the other teams like Vålerenga and such, which Beşiktaş met in the 90s. But Sarpsborg are relatively unknown. I think people know the teams like Bodo Glimt and all those types of clubs, but Sarpsborg are making their European debut, to my knowledge now. Perhaps they played in Europe before under the previous incarnation, I'm not sure, but but since 2008 for sure. Is this their first European campaign all around?
Yeah, I'm fairly certain this is their first European campaign. It's definitely their first time ever in the group stages. Mm-hmm. So when they made the groups, that was massive for them.
Okay.
But yeah, like in terms of how they're viewed in Norway, so in Norway, like for recent years at least, you've got Rosenborg, then you've got a big drop off to sort of Molde, Sarpsborg. So Sarpsborg have been a team. They, like I said, they've been consistent in the top division for about 5-6 seasons now. And if you look at their results, every year they've been sort of improving, slowly improving. And then last year they finally sort of managed to make the top three, which is where the European qualification comes into play. And yeah, they're generally seen as quite a progressive club in Norway. Norway, a lot of the teams over there are very old school. They're very very set in their ways. 4-3-3, 4-4-2. This is how we're going to play, and that's it. Sarpsborg are very much the opposite of that almost. They were one of the first teams to sort of publicly say they had an analysis department in-house. Their director of football was called Thomas Berntsen. He's been all over the world sort of trying to scout these new players. And yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if you looked at the Sarpsborg team, but over the last few seasons they have had players from a lot of different countries coming into the team, which is good to see, because the problem with a lot of Norwegian teams, they can be quite insular. They'll just recycle their old players. They'll just keep going back to the same ones. Whereas Sarpsborg will try to sort of just push the boat out a little bit, just try to be a little bit different to give them an edge on the rest of the league.
So is it almost as extreme as the Danish site Midtjylland, who use a special algorithm to find their players? Not like that, I assume.
I don't think it's as extreme, just purely because of budget constraints. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure if Sarpsborg had the budget and the opportunity to do that, very much go down that route. But they are still, like, in the grand scheme of things, a very small club in comparison to a lot of other Norwegian teams. So they essentially just try and get the best out of their budget. They try and, push that budget as far as it will go to get the most out of their players. They're all about these sort of marginal gains, getting little bits of an advantage here and there. So yeah, they're punching above their weight at the moment. But it wouldn't surprise me to see, like, in a few more years they'll start challenging for a title and getting back into Europe consistently.
And of course, the valuable experience they'll gain during this European campaign may help contribute to that. But Ben, can you talk a little bit about how they're doing in their current league campaign? Because they finished top 3 last season, or was it top 4?
Yeah, they finished 3rd last season.
Okay, and how are they doing right now after 21 games have already gone by in the Norwegian league? So in Norway, the competition is already going full throttle.
Yeah, so we're actually in last sort of 9 games now. 21 games played, they're on 32 points at the moment. So it's not been quite as successful as last year, but then if you look at the table, they're still 2 points off 4th, 6 points off 3rd, so it's still possible they could recreate last season's success. And a few weeks ago, they were on track for that. They were in 4th position a few weeks ago, and they were winning games. But I think the European schedule's just started to catch up with them a little bit, because they've been, obviously, I'm sure as you know, like, the European schedule stretches back to mid-July. So from mid-July until end of August, they've just been playing like midweek weekend. And yeah, I think that started to affect them a little bit. They've lost their last couple of league games. Because they've been put in the Europa League qualification ahead of their league form currently. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's paid off, which is good. But then I think they're still keen to sort of try and get that league form back on track to try and finish in the top 3 or 4 again this season.
Yeah, it's understandable. I mean, they've played 8 games. It's the first time already in Europe. So interweaving that with the competition, that can get very trying, I think, especially if you're already deep into the season and all that stuff. So that's very understandable. But you were talking about their scouting system before and how they attract their players. Are there certain players that pop out to you that really are viewed as their key players, and what are their strengths, their weaknesses, and might we know them from somewhere, having seen them in different leagues or something like that?
I'm not sure if you'd know them, but because a lot of them do come from smaller leagues. Sarpsborg will be scouting like a lot of smaller teams, trying to find the hidden gems as such. But yeah, I'd say they have the 2 sort of traditional key players. They've got a midfielder called Christopher Zachariasen. He's 23 years old, and I mean, as I just mentioned, like, they like to sign players from smaller leagues. They signed this guy a couple of seasons back from a Norwegian 3rd tier side, where he was playing at the time, and ever since then he's come into a team. He's become a regular. He's now very, very close to a Norwegian national team call up. He's just a very, very dynamic midfielder. He's very good with the ball at his feet. Creates a lot of chances. Can play in the middle. He can play out wide. And yeah, he's this year become one of the best players probably ever in Sarpsborg, I think it'd be fair to say. And as well as him, they got a striker called Patrick Mortensen. Mortensen was with Lyngby in Denmark before, I believe. He scored quite a few goals there. He's not a prolific striker as such, but he's this big sort of burly striker. And yeah, he's very important to Sarpsborg with how they play. So the guy I wanted to mention actually was Rashad Mohammed. Rashad is a 24-year-old French guy, and I covered him 2 seasons ago for a team called Floro. And Floro at that point were one of the smallest teams I've probably ever covered. They were run by just one guy, manager who would do everything for the club. And they had this guy Rashad in, and I saw him and he was just lightning quick, like unbelievably quick. And I thought, well, he's quick, but has he got sort of anything else to go with it? And he was still, this is when he was about 22 years old, he was still a very raw talent. But yeah, Sarpsborg took a gamble on him last season and brought him into their first team with a view to sort of trying to get him up to scratch, try and get him first team ready. And it's only been this season where he's finally broken into a team. And if you look at their European campaign, if you look at any of the games, teams are just so frightened of playing against him because you got Rashad, you got Mortensen up front, And Mortensen is sort of the big burly guy. He'll get a ball down, he'll feed it through to Rashad. This guy is so quick. He could probably just get behind any defence in the world. He'll cause you all sorts of problems. He's not the best finisher. He's not the best dribbler. Not got the best touch. But I compare him. I don't know if you remember a guy called Gabby Agbonlor for Aston Villa. I don't know if you remember him at all.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so he's very similar in the fact that he can run for days. He's lightning quick, but then once he gets in the box 1-on-1, you never know if he's going to finish or not. But either way, he's a sort of player that could cause like a lot of teams a lot of problems if they don't do their research into him.
Yeah, definitely those types of players that on their day can torture any defense. I'm already dreading it right now just listening to you describe him.
It'll be interesting to see if he can get behind Vida. It'll be interesting, Vida and Pepe. Because
Vida's pretty quick actually for a central defender, and Pepe for his stature, for his age, is pretty quick as well. But for sure, I mean, if you're going to put one of those speedsters up against them, that's always going to be tough. But it's especially going to be interesting to see him against Gökhan Gönül, who has this reputation these days a little bit for struggling against fast opponents. So it's going to be very interesting. And what about their coach, Ger Backe? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Not bad actually. From what I gather, anyway. I'm sure mine.
But what is his type of footballing philosophy? What type of football does he likes to play, and what type of football does Sarpsborg play?
Yeah, so Sarpsborg generally have been playing 4-4-2 the last few seasons. Ger Backe is a very, very experienced coach. He was actually an assistant at Vålerenga. He's been assistant at Molde. He's managed a couple of other sort of teams in Norway. He's got a very good reputation there. He's just sort of manager. He'll get the best out of a team that's maybe not the best, if you know what I mean. He's a sort of manager who'll extract like as much as he can out of a team. So yeah, Sarpsborg, I mean, in Europe at least, they've been playing some very nice counter-attacking football. As I said, with Rashad up front and Patrick Mortensen, you've got these guys who are just perfectly suited to that style of football. But yeah, their midfield is very possession orientated. Like Zacharias and a guy called Matti Lund Nielsen in midfield, very much sort of they're not going to be running, they're not going to be attacking you all the time, but they will sort of sit there, they'll feed the wingers, they'll try and play it through to Rashad. So yeah, there's been a lot of counter-attacking football recently. It's been a lot of sort of, I wouldn't call it long ball football because I feel like that sounds a bit disrespectful, but they have been sort of looking to play it long, looking to get Rashad down the sides, get him in behind the defence. And yeah, their fullbacks are generally quite attacking as well. Both solid defenders, but yeah, they have been known to sort of push forward quite a lot as well. So yeah, I'm fairly sure in this group stage they'll probably look to play a lot of counter-attacking football because they are on paper the weakest team in that group. So yeah, that's how I'd expect them to play.
Let's move on to their route to the group stages because they, like we already alluded to earlier, they had a pretty busy parcours to get there. They played IBF of Iceland in the first qualifying. Well, I'm just going to call it the first qualifying round. That's not actually the name. It's like the fourth qualifier round, I guess.
Whatever it's called.
Yeah. But they basically walloped them 0-4 at away in Iceland, and then 2-0 at home, so 6-0 on aggregate. Not too much of a problem for them there. Then they moved on to St. Gallen from Switzerland and quite impressively managed to knock the Swiss out as well, because this is a team that's played in Europe plenty of times before. And they lost away 2-1, but then won at home 1-0, and they went through on away goals, of course, 2-2 in aggregate. Then Rijeka from Croatia, the champion from Croatia from 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, 1-1 at home, and then winning 1-0 away, so 2-1 on aggregate there. And then finally Maccabi Tel Aviv, another relatively big name in Europe. I mean, especially when you're looking at this level of European football. 3-1 at home, impressive win, and then a 2-1 loss away, a 4-3 win on aggregate. So you were telling me you watched all of these games. Is there anything that jumps out in these matches? Did they play really well? Just give us a little bit of your thoughts on these games.
Yeah, like I mean, as you said, the first game against IBV, that was very much a rollover. And it was expected to be as well. Norway is generally considered as a stronger league than Iceland. So yeah, 4-0 was a fair result. And then second leg, they rested a lot of their players, 1-2-0. Very comfortable. And I think St. Gallen was sort of the first time when I really thought, like, wow, could they actually sort of go far? The first leg it finished 2-1 St. Gallen, but really it should have been about 4-2 to Sarpsborg, 5-2. They had so many chances and just could not convert these chances. And it was so frustrating to watch because they were much a better team. St. Gallen are having a pretty poor season so far this year. I think they've lost quite a lot of players. So yeah, I was glad when Sarpsborg managed to beat them 1-0 in the second leg, which was very, very tense. But yeah, then they moved on to Rijeka, and that was the game where I mean, both myself and a lot of fans thought, okay, like we'll get a good trip out of this. It'll be a good European run, but they're probably going to beat us. You know, that was a leg that we all thought that'd happen. And when they drew 1-1 in the first leg, it was a massive shock. I mean, they went 1-0 up. Probably should have gone 2-0 up. And then Rijeka equalised fairly late on, which set it up perfectly for the second leg. And then, yeah, the second leg was just ridiculously tense. 0-0 throughout. You could not call a winner. And then I think it was 89th, 90th minute or something. Patrick Mortensen pops up. Rijeka can't clear a free kick and he just slams the ball over from 6 yards out. Everyone's going mad. There's about 20 Sarpsborg fans in the stadium who are going absolutely crazy for it. And yeah, that was when I think ever since that win they've just been so confident in their own ability. So going to a Maccabi Tel Aviv game, again, like on paper you'd say there's no chance they should win this. Yeah, Maccabi Tel Aviv have got some very good players. They've got a guy called Kjartansen up front who's been in Norway before and scored 20 odd goals. So when they won that first leg 3-1, it was just sort of, wow, you know, like they're actually going to do it. I can't quite believe it, but they're going to do it. And yeah, I followed the second leg live as well, and they went 2-0 down, which was sort of panic time, I guess. 2-0 down, so at that stage they were going out on away goals. And then again, last 10 minutes, managed to get a penalty. Jürgen Ole Halverson steps up, converts it, and then just cling on for the last 5 minutes and end up going through. So yeah, I mean, St. Gallen, Rijeka and Maccabi definitely all probably on paper better teams than Sarpsborg. So it's been a really amazing run of form for them to actually beat these teams, and not just sort of scrape through as well. They have deserved on the whole to be where they are. They're not just sort of scrappy 1-0 wins. They are like generally Sarpsborg have been a dominant team in those matches. So yeah, it's been really great to follow it, and the fans are all sort of getting well into it, getting so excited. So yeah, it'll be good to see what they can do in the group stage now.
So definitely not a fluke for them to get to the group stage, as you'd say.
No, not at all. Yeah, like I said, I think they probably deserve it, if anything.
Mm-hmm. And how was that? I mean, you said it like after the St. Gallen game, you expected, oh, they might be able to go far now. But did you ever expect that, oh, they might actually be able to go all the way and get to the group stages?
I mean, I'm a bit of an optimist, I guess. So I was always hoping that they could make it because it'd be such a good story. And at that stage as well, there's 4 Norwegian teams in European competition. And I was sort of hoping that Sarpsborg would be the ones that would make it all the way. But I think in reality, as soon as they got drawn against Rijeka, I think they would have taken any result there. They would have said, look, right, this has been great, but they're a better team. They'll probably beat us. If they do, it's no worries sort of thing. But I think as soon as Mortensen scores that last-minute goal against Rijeka to send them through, ever since then it's just all been, yeah, they can actually do this. They deserve to beat Rijeka. If they can beat them, they could probably beat Tel Aviv, and they did. So yeah, I think it's been great, and the fans have got really into this run as well, which is great to see. They've got a very good support anyway, Sarpsborg. They're one of the better supported teams in Norway, actually. But yeah, every home match is a sellout in the stadium. They're having to expand the stadium a little bit now for a group stage to sort of meet FIFA's requirements and everything. So yeah, I expect that the whole sort of area really will be sort of fully behind the team. probably even some Fredrikstad fans. You know, I mean, as we spoke sort of off air a bit before, Fredrikstad and Sarpsborg, big rivals in Norway. Fredrikstad are generally the historical bigger club with a bigger fan base. But yeah, it would not surprise me to see a few of their fans turn up in the stadium, you know, just to get a bit of that European atmosphere. So yeah, it's been great.
So is their stadium getting expanded because it's roughly 7,000 and holds roughly 7,000 people right now, or are they converting normal stand-up stands to seats or something, or what exactly are they doing to meet UEFA criteria?
I'm not completely sure. I think a lot of it's just general FIFA stuff, such as like an extra set of loos or stuff like that. They're getting like a few like new turnstiles in for ticketing. Yeah, it's a 7,000 seater stadium, but I reckon they'll probably look to push that capacity up a little bit if they can, because I'm fairly sure if it went up to 10,000, they'd feel that too. Demand for tickets in the last leg against Maccabi Tel Aviv was massive, and they sold it out really quickly. I'm hoping to try and get over to Norway to watch one of the games, actually. Possibly against Beşiktaş, I think that'd be a good game. So, yeah, we'll see. But I think they're in the process of just sort of figuring out what needs to be done and how quick we need to do it. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how much a stadium gets sort of improved, I guess.
And let's move on to the draw then, because Sarpsborg were of course in pot 4, and they were drawn in a pretty tough group, I'd say. Beşiktaş from pot 1, Racing Genk from Belgium from pot 2, and Malmö from Sweden from pot 3. So both Beşiktaş and Racing Genk were quarterfinalists 2 years ago in the Europa League. I was going to call it the UEFA Cup. That's just me showing my age. And then, of course, you know, a Scandinavian derby against one of the bigger teams in Sweden, against Malmö. Yeah. What was the reaction like to this draw, and what are the expectations and the mindset heading in to the group stages from the club's perspective?
Well, I think that reaction to the draw, generally, I think Sarpsborg knew that they were one of, if not the weakest team in the draw at that stage. So I think most fans expected, you know, we're going to get a tough group. No matter who it is, it'll be tough. So I think a lot of fans wanted like a London team. I mean, I definitely wanted a London team. Sort of Arsenal or Chelsea, or like one of the bigger teams. So I think when Beşiktaş came out, I think a lot of fans are quite happy with that. I'm sure they know like they're not on paper going to win that game, but then to get guys like Negredo, Quaresma, Pepe, Karius coming to Sarpsborg and playing there, that's going to be massive, especially in the sort of a commute and everything. It'll be a sellout game, I'm sure. Like all the fans will be well up for it. So it's very rare to see a big European side come to Sarpsborg and show off their stuff. So whilst they won't expect to win that, it'll be just great for the fans. If they can get any result from it, it would be historic, to be honest. Like it'd be one of the biggest results in history. So yeah, and then as for Genk, I mean, Genk are another very strong team. They've got a guy called Sander Berger in midfield, who's from Vålerenga. He's in the Norwegian national team now. He's one of the brightest prospects in Norwegian football. So it'll be cool to see him coming back to Norway and playing. Left a couple of years ago and has just been really good ever since. So that'll be another tough game. And Malmö, yeah, another one who they tend to get paired off with a lot of Norwegian clubs in Europe throughout a qualifying round sometimes. So it's quite rare to see in the same group. But again, like good to have a local fixture, I guess. But I do think a lot of Sarpsborg fans probably would have wanted like a different sort of away trip, which would have been nice. So yeah, as for expectations, I think they're the underdogs in the group. It's that classical sort of nothing to lose mentality. So I'm fairly sure they'll go into the group. They'll say, look, if we lose 6 games, we lose 6 games. It won't be the end of the world. Yeah, we'll take the financial benefits from this and build on that for next year. Obviously, I think like any positive result against any of these teams will be celebrated massively. Even Malmö probably a slightly better team than Sarpsborg. Genk and Beşiktaş are sort of leagues above in just how they do things. So yeah, it'll be fun, and I think a lot of fans have got the same mentality of sort of, yeah, if we get a win somewhere, perfect. That'll be a great night out essentially. But if we lose, we lose. It's not the end of the world, and we can sort of come back stronger, hopefully in a couple of years or next year, and try and do it all over again.
So as for your own personal expectations, you said on paper Beşiktaş are that's not the match they're going to win. However, we saw a couple of years ago that Molde played Fenerbahce and they actually won 1-3 away, rubbing that in a little bit for the Fenerbahce fans. No, but I mean, that just goes to show you that you're never, in football, you always have a chance, especially at this level. Sarpsborg aren't a team from the Faroe Islands or anything like that. They're a professional Norwegian team. They always have a chance. Do you think that result that Molde got I think it was 2 years ago in the Europa League. Do you think that gives them hope that they might be able to pull off an upset here against Genk or against Beşiktaş?
Yeah, I'm sure it does, and I'm sure they'll probably look at these games and say, well, if Molde can do it, why can't we? Molde are traditionally a stronger team, but Sarpsborg have been doing about the same as they have this year. As I said, they'll know they're the underdogs, but then they've been the underdogs ever since the second qualifying round. They beat St. Gallen, they beat Rijeka, they beat Maccabi. All of these teams were expected to just ease past Sarpsborg and go through. So yeah, I think they've got this mentality now of being the underdogs and being the guys that want to beat these bigger teams. So yeah, as you said, there's always a chance in football, obviously. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that Beşiktaş will probably undervalue them slightly. They'll probably come to Sarpsborg and think, okay, we'll probably win this game. But whether they do or not is another matter. And I think, it wouldn't surprise me to get a draw. It's quite a tough place to come. Obviously, artificial pitch as well can play into it a little bit. A lot of teams don't like playing on the artificial grass. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if I saw an upset. Obviously, at the time, it probably surprised me, but saying it now, looking forward, if Sarpsborg gets sort of 4 or 5 points from their group, then yeah, I think it'd be brilliant. It wouldn't surprise me massively, no.
And do you think that if they would fail to get a point, for example, would you consider that a failure, or is it just, steep learning curve? You already said 4 or 5 points, that would be considered a success.
Yeah.
What do you think about? Is there any way they can actually fail, really, given their position in this group and the position they're facing?
I think it's interesting. I think if they come out of a group with 0 points, for example, and their league form has also suffered, I think that would be considered disappointing. But at the same time, I think if they come out of a group with 0 points and they're still on track in the league to qualify again next season, then it won't be too much of an issue. I think most fans and the team, the manager, and everything, they know this is their first time in the group stages. It's their first time playing opposition of the sort of calibre of Beşiktaş and Genk. So yeah, I think, put it this way, no one's going to get sacked if they finish with 0 points in a group. No one's going to be sort of hung out to dry because of that. Though it'll be celebrated, if anything, the fact they got that far. And yeah, I personally expect them to pick up a few points here and there. I think they'll give Malmo a very good game, home and away. It wouldn't surprise me if they took 3 points off Malmo. It wouldn't surprise me if they got 1 point off Genk or Beşiktaş at home. So yeah, it'd be fantastic if they could pick up a win. Even one win would be considered like a massive success, I'd say, in that group.
So what's your final prediction for this group? Who's going to go through? Who'll finish first, second, third, and obviously fourth? What do you think?
I think, on paper, Beşiktaş have got to finish first, I say. I'm putting pressure on you there, I know. But I think on paper they've got the best team. I think we've just signed Adam Ljajic. Don't know how to say his name. Adam Ljajic?
Yeah, Adam Ljajic, yeah.
Yeah,
from Torino.
Yeah, so again, there's a lot of very good players in that Beşiktaş team, and I think should finish first. And then Genk, probably the second place team, Malmo third, and then Sarpsborg fourth, I'd say. But again, you never know. If Sarpsborg do get a positive result against Malmo, then they could maybe finish third, which would be a brilliant result for them. But yeah, Beşiktaş and Genk, I think, are sort of nailed on to go through, should be.
Well, let's hope for our sakes that we can make good on that prediction, because we struggled. We had our fair amount of struggle against Lask from Austria, so it just definitely didn't get to the group stages unscathed. But Ben, I would very much like to thank you for giving your insights. I think we learned a lot today about Sarpsborg, about Norwegian football. You clearly know your stuff. You've been covering the Norwegian league for 3.5 years, and I'm one of those people. I don't like to ever I don't ever like to call myself an expert. I think it's up to other people to do. But I think you definitely are an expert. You really know your stuff, and you're already referring to Sarpsborg as we, so you're already getting indoctrinated there as well.
I did not even realise, to be fair.
No, but that's great. That's great. That just shows that you're enjoying your job and you have an emotional connection already to the Norwegian league and all that stuff. So that's really good. So Ben, is there anything you'd like to plug before we head off air here? Anything in particular you're working on? Do you have a column, a blog, or something? Where can they find your work for Football Radar, all that kind of stuff? And please also plug your Twitter handle or any other social media, anything like that.
Yeah, sure. So, well, thanks first of all for having me on. Always good to have a chat and everything. And yeah, it'd be exciting to see how the group stages go. But yeah, nothing particularly to plug really. Just if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's FR Football Ben, FOTBALL BEN. Yeah, I do a bit of writing for certain websites, so there should hopefully some articles on there. Got my own little blog, but it's not a regular thing yet. So, but yeah, if you just follow me on Twitter, then keep up with sort of how Sarpsborg are doing, and hopefully I'll be watching all the group stage games. So, be doing a bit of live tweeting from that as well. So yeah. But again, yeah, thanks for having me on my podcast. Much appreciated.
And once again, thank you, Ben, and we'll definitely keep in touch and, pick your brain about what you saw in the group stages afterwards, perhaps. So for us at the Black Eagles podcast, thank you for listening, and good evening, good morning, good night, whatever, when you're listening to this. That will do it for me for today. Kaan Bayazit and my guest, Ben Wells. Thank you, and good night. Goodbye. Whatever.
Okay. Very nice. Great interview there. Ben Wells, everyone. He can be followed again at FR Football, FOTBALL, Ben, BEN. And again, yeah, he works for footballradar.com. Very nice, very informative stuff. Thank you, Ben, for coming in. Thank you, Kaan, for once again procuring yet another illustrious guest. And here we are, keeping you, our personal wing of the Beşiktaş fan base, the most informed group amongst all of them. In the Twitterverse, multiverse, Beşiktaş Twitter multiverse. Twitter, I don't know. We're everywhere. We're not even Twitter. Why constrain ourselves? Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, please give us a follow on Twitter at Eagles_podcast. Follow Beşiktaş_INT for all the latest news up to the minute 24/7. Follow myself at Sir_Writes_a_lot. And of course, Kaan at Razerian, RAZZERIAN. And our guest at FRFOTBALL, Ben, BEN. And as always, spread the word. Tell everyone you know about the sensation that is the Black Eagles podcast. Our fan base is growing. The numbers are showing it. So please, that means you're out there, listeners. Let us know what you think. Go on to Twitter. Give us all the deets. Let us know what we can do better. Let us know how amazing we are, if that's how you feel, Please, don't hold back in that regard, ever. And yeah, definitely, let everyone you know who has any interest in Beşiktaş or football, but probably just Beşiktaş, to be fair. But yeah, anyone, let them know. Spread the word. And beyond that, I'm signing out here, but never lose faith. We may not be taking the plaudits thus far, but guys, ladies, everyone, whoever, the season is young. There's much to be played for. The talent is in place. and the talent is in abundance. We've got a few great additions into the squad. They're all there. It's all, now we know exactly who we've got, what we're working with. We've lost Alvaro Negredo, but let's be fair here. He had a bit of a streak of, he showed something for a couple of matches early on, sort of coming out of the preseason, but he hasn't been particularly good of late. He had a wonder cross, no doubt, that, set up Ryan Babel, but that was hardly a common thing for him to be doing. He had an entire season to show us something last year, and he didn't really do it. And let's be frank here, we're in a situation, let's not forget the episode with John Okar, where we're in a tough economy. We're in sort of dire straits in that regard. We may have a foreign player limit incoming. So, hey, we've shed a guy who may not have been contributing too much to the squad anyway. It was quite expensive. That's helping us in some regard. And so when we look at this club, this giant behemoth of a multinational club, we have to be mindful of the big picture here. And we have to be mindful not simply of what we're seeing out on the pitch before us, but also of what's happening behind the scenes, what's happening in the coffers, so to speak. And in some regard, what's happening there is positive as far as losing Negredo and this coming transfer season, this coming window starting January. Clearly the objective is going to have to be to get rid of Wagner Love as well. Hopefully we can get something out of him. We know Santos, I don't know how to pronounce that particularly well. My Portuguese is not so great, but they are interested. We know as much. They couldn't quite make that deal before their window closed, but I think at this stage we'll take anything to get rid of his contract and maybe get a little something in return, which would enable us to get someone. Think of all those rumors we heard in the preseason that if we can get rid of Negredo's substantial salary fee, we'll bring in X, we'll bring in Y, we'll bring in Z. Now we have a Japanese sponsor in the Mainichi group. Perhaps this opens the doors for us to bring in a Shinji Kagawa? I don't know. We shall see. But, signing out, Sinan Schwarting here. Let's hope Thursday is a victorious day for us against our Norwegian opposition. And until then, and on that day and forevermore, go Beşiktaş!
Hey everyone, Kaan here, just with some quick thoughts on this whole Negredo thing. I know Sinan already addressed it in the show's intro, but yeah, I wanted to give my 2 cents on this as well, since I don't want to spending too much time on it in the upcoming episodes. I think it's one of those things where you just need to kind of move on, but. As you know, I was in Germany this past weekend and came home, and I kept, I managed to watch the game, the Malatya game on my phone and stuff like that, but you're kind of out of the loop a little bit regardless. And There had been these rumors for a while already from Negredo still leaving, and I mean, I completely understand the club's position in regards to finances. He earns 4.3 million a year. He has an automatic extension clause. If he plays 25 official games this season, he would automatically extend for an additional season with guaranteed 4 million a year. Um, there's talk of some money that he hadn't received yet. That's also being foregone. And then on top of that, he's fetching us just under 1 million of a transfer fee. So all that, it makes perfect financial sense. You're offloading essentially almost, well, you're basically offloading more than 8 million euro in wages over this and next season. You're also winning or not having to pay almost a million in wages, and then you're getting almost a million in transfer fees. So you're basically offloading a 10 million euro burden. So that makes perfect sense given that we're not in the Champions League this year, and I think his what he gives us, he was never worth that money. And I've been saying that I think all along since June, July, whenever we started the podcast. That said, I don't think that Negredo is a bad player. I've said that many times. Sinan has said that many times. I think Negredo is a fine player. And there's people now saying, this is not a big loss for us. He wasn't very good and this and that, but that's just not true. He definitely wasn't Mario Gomez. He wasn't a Cenk Tosun. He wasn't a Dembaba, but he was more than a decent player, a useful player. Technically, he was sound. And recently, he had been scoring goals more frequently, I think, than he had last season. He had gotten a little bit of that uh, Tor instinct back, like they like to say in Germany. Having said all that, I think that offloading him was a must for the club, but we should have done it. The timing is terrible. We should have done it before the transfer window closed in Turkey. And if not, then they should have still brought in another striker, um, because it's difficult for me to imagine that this wasn't already kind of in the works. And I know they're kind of in a position of, okay, we can't really risk, bringing in a new player if the Grado doesn't leave, and then we have only more wages. But they didn't allow Wagner Love to join Galatasaray on deadline day. Um, had Wagner Love joined Galatasaray on deadline day, then we would have brought in Burak Yilmaz. Now, I'm like many people, I don't like Burak. He's not a player I wanted, but and he earns a lot of money, all of that. But still, I think now with Negredo gone, we're kind of left with nothing. Kyle Larin has not been cutting the mustard. He's not ready yet. I don't know if he'll ever be. I hope he will, but at this moment he isn't. He's played more than 600 minutes already this season, and he's been involved in only 4 goals. 3 of those goals came against semi-professional players of Torshavn. Then he had one really good assist to Oleshan, but that's like, one good assist in 450 minutes or something that he played outside of the Torshavn games. That's one good thing he did. Okay, he got like against Antalyaspor, there were some penalty positions that he could have gotten, should have gotten perhaps. It's not like he's completely useless or anything, but he's just so ineffective. I think for Lauren the problem is really that he's not coping well with the pressure of being first choice. I think he's someone that needs to be eased in. I've said it before. I think a loan spell would have been great for him. Um, so yeah, that's that. So I think it's just really bad timing. Wagner Love, that's never gonna work out. Kyle Larin, he isn't ready. And then who else do we have? Güven Yalçın. I mean, he's a 19-year-old kid. Are you going to trust him for 3.5 months to get you the goals that you need? On top of that, you're going to have to play a different style of football probably, which I actually don't mind. I think that probably the best option would be Ryan Babel up front with Lenz and Quaresma on the wings. The problem is with Quaresma though, he's always going to go back to crossing the ball, and without a tower in the box, which Negredo kind of was. He was a target man. Without that, honestly, I don't know. It's not going to be enough. I think we're going to have to shift away from the crossing game, which we probably should have been doing anyway. Hopefully, Laic can claim the ball more. I mean, his debut was very promising. He showed some really nice stuff. But again, an invisible Oğuzhan, so we have to see more of him. Oğuzhan, Laic are going to have to step up. Lens is going to have to get more confidence from Şenol Güneş again. He's just going to have to give that guy the fate he deserves and that he earned in the beginning of the season, because subbing him at halftime against Malatyaspor, that's just more of the same of last season to me. Maybe he wasn't very good in the first half, but neither was Quaresma. So he's just doing the same with Lens again. And then finally, I just want to say one more thing. The whole medal red card. It's just so typical again. Like always, again, before a Fenerbahce away derby, it's like we always get these controversial red cards. There was Anderson Talisca 1 or 2 years ago that got like this ridiculous red card. He got fouled and he gets a second yellow. It's ridiculous. Then there was Atiba Hutchinson's, that his foot was on the line with Konyaspor were about to take a penalty, and the refs gave him 2 yellow cards in like 30 seconds, which isn't even allowed according to the rule book. It's ridiculous. And now this, it's just typical. Every time before a Fenerbahce derby, it's like they always. It's like we're not allowed to win those games. That's what it's like. Look at the last season we played twice with Kadıköy, and twice we had a goal disallowed for offside when it wasn't offside. In the cup game there was the Babel goal, and in the league game there was the Negredo goal. Both disallowed. And they get these free penalties, and we get red cards and all that shenanigans. It's always the same BS. I don't know why that is, but it's always with them, always the same BS. So, honestly, heading into the weekend, I don't have a lot of faith in that we'll be allowed to get anything from that game, even if we were capable of doing so, because we're not playing the best football, but neither are they. Okay, and then just one more thing. I think also selling Negredo kind of puts a little bit of a bomb under our Europa League campaign. I mean, without a striker, it might be difficult for us to even qualify from this group. We are supposed to be qualifying from this group. We're the strongest team on paper for sure, but Genk are going to give us trouble. Malmo are probably going to give us trouble, and maybe even Sarpsborg. So hopefully on Thursday we can start the group stage off with a win. And we just have to hope that in the next 3.5 months, the striker situation isn't going to cost us too much, and that it's not going to cost us too many points, and that we're going to be able to qualify from this group. And then we have to have faith that they have a replacement lined up, and that replacement comes in on January 1st, not on January 30th or whatever when the window closes. But, it's probably just going to be another scramble, another Wagner Love last second resort, overspending. Yeah, let's hope for the best. Yeah, and let's hope we get a good result on Thursday.
Beşiktaş International hopes you enjoyed this program.